Until you are earning like $250,000 a year in GCI or in revenue that you're generating, whether it's from creative deals or retail, like you shouldn't even be thinking about investing in anything other than yourself and your business to make yourself more valuable, generate more leads, right? Because it's not until you get to that place where you actually have like a little bit of money to invest. Once you are at that place, or perhaps beyond it, now it becomes a question of like asset allocation, right? Like what to put capital into. And there's only a few places you can. First and foremost is your business and yourself, because the thing that's actually your greatest vehicle for building wealth are not your investments, it's your income. Then it would come down to vehicle selection in terms of, types of investments. Real estate obviously is an investment that me and you choose to participate in. And there's these two different routes. So one route is where somebody like actually owns the physical asset themselves. They do the management themselves, they take out the loans, right? The second route is to do it via a syndication, which is where you find a professional investor who is buying, a commercial piece of real estate, multifamily, or something of that nature, put money into that syndication. You own a small piece of a very big building that you would normally not have access to, and then they pay you in distributions, preferably monthly.
I'll start off by just saying that at the leadership's retreat at Elite Builders, you went over two different paths. You said, look, once you start making money, so if you implement what we're teaching you, you're going to start making money, and some of you are already making money, so you'll start making more money. Once you have money, you're going to have a couple of problems. One of the problems is, or two roads. Do I go on the status, comfort, and ego route, or do I go on the time freedom and location freedom route, basically? Let's assume that you choose the second route, the status, or not the time freedom and location freedom route.
Yeah.
With that road, you have to make a couple decisions. Okay, do I become an active investor, meaning like I invest in the asset myself, or do I go to real estate syndicators and just get a small piece of the big deal and partner up with some big operators? The reason real estate is very appealing to a lot of people is because it comes with tax benefits associated with it a lot of the times. I've done both. I've done the active and I've done the real estate syndications. And I remember going to my accountant with a couple of syndication deals and just talking about like, hey, look, these are the tax write-offs. Are these right? And what he told me is he's like, look, even though you get tax write-offs, don't invest just because of the tax write-offs. Invest because the deal makes sense and the tax write-offs are a bonus. And when he said that to me, I didn't understand it fully. I was just like, he's an accountant. He doesn't know what he's talking about, whatever. But then I went the route of investing in a couple real estate syndications. And with those real estate syndications, I was offered certain returns and a certain business plan. And that business plan made sense to me. Unfortunately, there were some changes in the marketplace where interest rates went up from 3 to 7%. And a lot of the real estate syndicators did not take that scenario into adjustment. There's a certain amount of them that are in trouble. So when people ask me like, hey, what segment of the real estate market do you see like the biggest correction? I see it in the multifamily space or commercial space. Why? Because the loans are not fixed for 30 years, meaning they are fixed for 5 to 7 years, in some cases 10 years. But let's say that you have a 5-year fix and you have it at 3%, you may be making cash flow. But at 7%, the deal no longer makes sense and you might even be negative cash flow. And when it's negative cash flow, it's either A, we come in out of pocket to keep the cash flow good, or B, you let the building go into foreclosure.
I've never been on one of these calls with syndicators where the presentation is not perfect and rosy. It's always like, it was going to be great, right? So you have to really look at the investment thesis. So meaning like some people do like value add, which is basically like flipping just at scale. You're flipping an apartment building, right? With the goal where you buy and then you renovate, you raise the NOI, you raise the kind of, rents and therefore the NOI. And in doing so, you make the building more valuable and you can sell it. Now, a key variable there is the cost of money, because to your point, those types of commercial loans are usually on 3 to 5 year schedules, sometimes 7. If rates are very low, that's an optimal environment to be doing that. Well, once that changes, which it's changed dramatically, that's why you're seeing a lot of people who are utilizing that thesis, who got loans in 2020 or beyond, and those loans are coming due, two things are happening. One is the cost of money has doubled. So now when they go to the markets to refinance, it's going to actually cost them more money. But two, the values have gone down. So then the bank's saying, yeah, we'll let you refinance it, but you're going to have to give us more money. Like it's more of a down payment, right? So that's causing people to have to get out of these deals, right? So in a broad sense, you get access to a vehicle that you would normally not have access to, which is great. But I also have to think through, like, is this the right environment? So like, in other words, somebody I know that's doing this, their competitive advantage is that they're still doing value adds, but they're only buying with either where the syndicator, they can underwrite a new loan with their own balance sheet, but they keep the same terms as the previous owner had. So they'll still keep that 4% interest rate. You can still do that, right? Like that allows that strategy to still work. Or they do seller financing, right? Where the seller holds a note, right? And then they can get more favorable rates. So, and then another thing you want to look at too is like, so not only the thesis, but then you also want to look at kind of the equity stack. Like, is the syndicator actually putting their own money into the deal? And if so, how much, right? Because it's not uncommon for those syndicators where they make money on acquisition fees and disposition fees. And sometimes they just like do deals just to get the acquisition or the disposition fee. And they're actually not investing a lot of their own money in the game. So you want to see that as well. For me, a key philosophy has been, I know what my core competency is. I know that I'm capable of like doing those other things, but I also know that if I stay in my lane and if my most valuable asset is really my income, that in those areas, I want to have operational partners. So that way I'm not spending a lot of my time or energy and effort managing, right? Because that would be pulling me away from the main driver that really is the key factor to building wealth, which is my income. So I personally don't believe that anybody should spend like meaningful amounts of their own time on actively managed assets until their residual is greater than their earned income, which for most people is like never.
Ah, you're an ambulance chaser. Why would I call these people? Somebody just died. That's terrible. I first want to address, before we have this conversation, an internal belief that ends up stopping people from calling these.
I battled with this for a long time.
Because
I struggled with it.
Yeah, which was funny because despite the fact that he would bust down doors like this with like an AK-47, he would call me and be like, I don't know, bro. I don't know if we should call these people. Like, what are you talking about?